Okay. As you know, I'm a veterinarian, not a speaker, so you have to bear with me on my presentation. Yes, I was drawn into it, kind of like a moth to the light. And some of my presentation is really the story of that, the narrative of how I came into spay-neuter, and I think it also mirrors a lot of the experiences that people have who start spay-neuter clinics or programs or whatever you want to call it. And the top line, spay-neuter program, is where most people start and where, coincidentally, First Coast No More Homeless Pets started, with a low-income program that sent animals to the private area veterinarians. And that was the first thing that I started to do. I was actually a volunteer for the Veterinary Medical Association where I lived in Virginia to administer a program like that, free surgeries for people who are qualified. And they were very emphatic that those are the only people they wanted to be in this program. I soon learned that it also came with a little asterisk, which was they didn't want me to advertise. This was a program that nobody used. It was there, they wanted to say they were doing something, but it really wasn't effective at all. So that lost its interest for me. This is basically referring to what program. Lots of people don't know what it is or even that it existed. So the next thing that happened was I read an editorial in the paper from a veterinarian who was upset that a spay-neuter clinic was going to open. By the way, this picture is a joke. It's not real, but the editorial was essentially a diatribe against the idea of a spay-neuter clinic that was going to be a chop shop. There were going to be all kinds of horrible complications. It was going to be terrible for the animals that go there. And I was appalled at the tone of the editorial, and I was embarrassed that reflected the veterinarians in our community. So first thing I did was pick up the phone and called the people that were opening this clinic and volunteered. And so pretty soon I was their volunteer medical director. So we were excited. And this was the first one in Western Virginia. And breaking ground, lots of turmoil. But we said, just like Rick said, just get up the first step. We just went there. And at first, we were just thrilled that we were open. We had, and it really wasn't that much bigger than that building there. That's why I put that in there. It was tiny. I mean, the surgery room was about the size of the surgery table with a little bit of room for a surgeon. And in Virginia, you had to have a separate room for where the surgery was, and the prep area had to be in a different room. So anyway, we had to design the whole thing. We did, but it was in a space about this size. We were thrilled. The first thing that we did was find some veterinarians to staff it. I was a full-time veterinarian somewhere else, so I did it on my days off. But we had waiting lists. We had veterinarians that came in. The first problem that we came upon was that some of the days dragged on a lot longer than others. And the director was worried. And she said, what's the problem here? Are there just good vets and bad vets? Good surgeons and bad surgeons? What's the problem here? And so this started my OCD side. And I started thinking. So I put up a whiteboard in our room, and I asked them to write down the exact time, like 8 a.m., 8:6 a.m., whatever it was, that the surgery started, and I tracked it. I was not popular. The other veterinarians thought I was crazy. I think they were a little offended, you know, that I was tracking, but I was really just trying to get a sense of what amount of time it was taking. And what became clear to me was that the start and stop times weren't so much the problem, but the in-between, the spaces in between were the problem. And they would start and stop and start and stop, and, you know, you add that up, and you pretty soon you have a whole hour added to the end of your day. So one of the things we learned was that it's not so much how fast the surgeon is, but how well the flow is going and how much you can keep it rolling. And the little slogan on the bottom is really actually something that we do say in our clinic, and you just don't with the flow. That's you have to keep it going. If somebody comes in and wants us to give their whole attention to a new problem, that's a problem. We don't want to stop and figure out, you know, why a cat was put in the wrong carrier. Someone else has to do that. We keep rolling. Otherwise, the whole system breaks down. So that was my first epiphany. But this is the kind of thing that started the ball rolling. Next, we get into, so we've got a spay-neuter clinic open. But we want to be a little bit better than that. We want to make sure that we're not cutting corners, we're not taking risks with the lives of the animals that we're doing surgery on. So we coined the term. This was a task force that was convened in the middle of 2006, I guess. And we coined the term HQHVSN, high quality, high volume spay neuter. And this set up a set of guidelines that veterinary or spay neuter clinics could use to compare themselves to what we think is the standard. And one of the things that came up was the endless debate about what is high quality, what is high volume. And you know, ultimately, the high quality is that we meet or exceed the medical standards of that community, the veterinary medical standards of that community. High volume is a little bit different, and that's the topic of my talk here. It's subjective, but in our initial discussion, we decided that anywhere from 20 to 60 surgeries a day per veterinarian was high volume. And ultimately, we want it to be a high volume that will make a difference. So you put an additional caveat to that. So we're just like the other programs I talked about, the spay-neuter paper program, the spay-neuter clinic, the tiny little room, and now the HQHV spay-neuter clinic. We're open, yay. We're getting more efficient, and we're sustainable. So this is the progress we're making. Now we're actually proliferating. Now you'll see, you've probably, if you haven't heard that term before, you've probably started to hear a lot more about spay-neuter clinics on their own. In the last 10 years, I mean, they were trickling in before that, but then it just really took up. So spay-neuter clinics they're out there, and if they haven't come to your community, hopefully it's coming soon. So, here we go. So the next project that I took on was this Angels of Assisi, which recruited me out of my private practice job to do this full time. And the founder was very energetic, very hard-driven man named Norm Mason. And every day he would ask me, at the end of the day, we'd bring the shuttle back, and he'd say, so how many surgeries you do? So how many surgeries you do? It was like, he wanted to put that number in a column. And it grated on me at that time. I was like, oh, we worked really hard today, Norm. We're really working hard. And but he wanted to know how many surgeries we did. So, so eventually this idea started sinking in. I strenuously objected to the idea that he did it. There was no idea. He actually did it. Put the number on the side of the spay-neuter shuttle that you can see down there, that Winnebago, of how many surgeries we've done. So it really did say 24,581. And that's a made-up number. I mean, we went well past 40, 50,000 by the time I was there. But I thought this felt like number of burgers served, and it seemed to cheapen it, for me. And I also was worried that would open us up to criticism, that they would be like, oh, you're just doing one after another, you don't care how well they're done. So, but that's the idea starting to creep in, and I'm starting to accept it. Getting a little bit excited about it when we do well and we really have a smooth day. Then we start seeing a little bit pushback. We have veterinary staff that are not used to the pace that we run. Or we have people who are from an animal welfare perspective, and they just want to take care of each little animal that comes in. So I would lose staff and find out that they made comments such as it's not about the animals there. They're just not in it for, they're not really taking care of the animals. It's all about the numbers. Like that's a bad thing. And so at first I was a little bit hurt, but afterwards, again, it started sinking in. I started thinking, well, yeah, it's all about the numbers. Really, it is about the numbers. I mean, you need to make a difference. You need volume to make a difference. This wasn't really obvious at first. We were still in the perspective of taking care of one animal at a time. So I learned that I'm not the save one kind of person, which is really it. You remember the parable with the starfish and the little kid on the beach throwing the starfish back, and he says it makes a difference to that one. Well, that's not, I wasn't buying that, not for the purpose of progress. So I'm starting to buy into this. Volume matters. We need big numbers. We need to make a difference. We need to be able to measure it. And so, I'm okay with McDonald's. We would even kind of joke around that we were the Walmart of veterinary surgeons. Assembly line model is okay. It actually really works. And there's nothing wrong with it. And we don't have to be, embarrassed about that. That's what we do. So spay-neuter clinics, now we're getting bigger. And here's our first coast picture. Mega Spay-neuter Clinics. That term was kind of put on me by whoever wrote my title of my talk. It makes me think of like the Mega Adopt-a-thon, the Mega Spay-neuter Clinics. Everything's going to be mega now. But my definition of that is that we see a measurable difference. It's not just that we're open, it's just not that we're available, but that our programs make a difference. So, volume. So here are the basic principles. And these are not in any particular order of importance. I'm just going to go through these to see, just to give you explanations of how a clinic would develop. Keep in mind that most veterinary professionals come from private practice and don't think about volume, other than money. Not that implies that all veterinarians are money hungry, but that's sometimes how they're guided by how much money did we take in today. But anyway, so you're trying to get people away from that mindset and get them into production and quality at the same time. So lots and lots of little things that you can do to make your day go well and not stress the staff out, not have everybody fall apart into big crisis, and to achieve the volume that you're looking for. So these are some of the basic principles. And it starts out with centralized facility with transport. So we're offering a more efficient model here, as we started out with our little tiny one room, and then we got into assembly line, and now we're really loading them in there, and we're really trying to get a lot of animals in, basically to maximize the equipment that we have. The equipment, at least at the beginning, is the big money. That's what it took to get it started. You had to spend tens and thousands of dollars just to get the equipment there. And what's the point of having it and then only being open 3 days a week? And for the other 4 days, it's just sitting in an empty room. So the centralized clinic would not have closed days. Would ideally be open 7 days a week. Now we're still open 6, but if Rick has his way, we'll be open 7. But anyway, this is a concept of mega clinics. You want to maximize your facility. You've paid for all those cages. You've paid for all that anesthetic, equipment and surgical tables, and we want to use it. We got to do things on a big scale. I know lots of people here, because this is Farrell Freedom, face-to-face with Farrell Freedom. So a lot of people here are interested in the topic of how we handle feral cats. I'll kind of pepper this with some of the ways that we handle feral cats, which, by the way, you can see the True Catch traps, which are fantastic, and we get really annoyed when cats come in a different trap, because it's really difficult to maneuver them. We're really dependent on these now. And this is a little dated. This isn't even how we put these. Now, these cats would be covered now. They would be on a raised platform. But this is prior to our getting shelving made that was custom made for us to help us stack the cats in a hygienic manner, and one that we could clean easily. But at that point, we would have what we called carpets of traps, because it would be everywhere, up and down our hallways. We would already maximize or max out the floor space on our kennel rooms, so they would be lined up down the halls. We solved that problem by coming up with garage-type shelves that we could easily clean. They have, you'll see them if you go on the tour. They have trays that slide out that can be washed. We line them with newspaper. We lay a PVC pipe, half of a PVC pipe on it, and then put the trap on top. And we put them all next to each other, each covered, and now we're not a carpet of cat traps anymore. We're making progress, but I put the first, let's see if this works. Yeah, I put this picture in just because this demonstrates how in our practice we progress through the animals by first doing big dogs, working our way through to the size dogs to smaller dogs. Then we start on pet cats, which is this here. They have all their carriers waiting for the cat to go in after it's woken up. And then we move on to feral cats. So that's our typical day. And the way that we run our program, we keep feral cats overnight, but all of the pets go home. And then also we have animals that come in through a transport, so all the transports go home, and sometimes there's some ferals in there too. But ultimately that's the progress of the day, and this is how we organize high efficiency. We can do ferals, we can do more ferals because we keep them overnight, and we don't have to wait for them to recover and send them home the same day. We will actually we will make sure that they recover. I don't mean to imply that, but we will set all the cats out, and as we're cleaning and wrapping up for the day, the last few cats that had surgery are recovering, getting back to sternal, and ultimately brought into the kennel room and fed. So we don't have to stop at 3 o'clock. When I was on my mobile unit, I had to get every animal out of there so we could drive an hour or 2 hours back to Roanoke. But in this centralized clinic model, we are telling our staff, you're here, until 6 or 7, depending on what your schedule is. Some of the people who come in early get to leave at 6. Some of the people that came in a little bit later in the morning are the closers, and they stay. So we set expectations that you're going to be here, and also the surgeons, you're going to be doing surgery until 6. That's how it works. And then they have about an hour of recovery time afterwards, sometimes a little bit more. There's usually kennel people here. But it means that we don't have to stop in the middle of the afternoon. And that's also how we achieve the ability to do these feral freedom cats, which may not be on our schedule. So we end up doing those in the latter half of the afternoon. Again, setting expectations. Everybody understands what the day is going to be like, so they're not upset and stressed. Flexibility. I don't know if it's unique to the medical profession, but a lot of the doctors and technicians that I know really get set in their ways. And they want their schedule to be their schedule, and they want their policies. Everything had to be a policy. Either you're, against the policy or you're with it. And one of the things that really matters with running a mega clinic is flexibility. You have to be able to say, I don't know, maybe today we can do more. It just depends on how quickly we get done with the pets. But it's absolutely essential that you don't get rigid about the numbers that you book. This is one of the things that a lot of clinics get stopped at. They say, my doctor says he only do, 35 surgeries, so, I can only schedule that many. Well, we say it differently. We say we're going to be doing surgery until 6 o'clock. We stop prepping at around 5:15, but, the rest of the cases come through. And that's the expectation. So what you do in between those hours really is all about efficiency. And we will get animals done accordingly, and people aren't sitting there thinking, I have 2 more and then I can go home. I have 3 more and then I can go home. It just doesn't work that way. You're working. You're at work, and you're going to stay until the end of the day. We put in an average, in our appointment schedule, we'll put an average block for these walk-in ferals. This is a really broad concept. We don't try to micromanage it. But you do have to adjust it. So if it's the middle of the summer and we're getting a huge rush, if it's kitten season, and we're starting to see animals and we're starting to get backed up, we have to adjust that booking. So flexibility. This particular concept here for feral cats, walk-ins, I think is critically important for a program to offer. If you insist that all the trappers have to have appointments or have to know how many cats they're bringing in, or especially the new trappers, the ones that really aren't so sure, they kind of want to take care of that neighborhood cat, but they're not sure how to do it, and if like Monday night's going to work out, or maybe I won't see the cat until Wednesday, that's fine. We tell them, bring them in anytime. Whenever you trap them, we're open. We'll bring them in. And funny story, I carry a pager 24/7, and a cell phone, and I got a call during the first year, I remember, and somebody was really irate because they're out in our parking lot at 10 o'clock at night, and they said, you said any time, bring them in. And we probably did say any time, we just meant like business hours. But it's really important that everybody stays flexible and doesn't get rigid and doesn't stress about how many animals come in. And we can adjust. We don't tell people when they can pick up their feral cat. We tell them, wait till you're called. And that way, they're not going to be standing out there, drumming their fingers when we are maybe backed up one day. So this gives lots of options. Oops. Okay, we're going on some broad concepts of how the mega clinics will work. What will make a mega clinic more successful? Limited services. Don't offer everything from A to Z. You're really going to confuse everybody, and that assembly line is going to break down. In the case of Farrell's, one topic that comes up a lot is the leukemia FIV testing, combo testing. We don't really encourage that because that is not. There's a lot of topics around that, but it doesn't contribute towards the sterilization of animals, and the addition of extra services really starts slowing down the process. So we try to get people who want to address individual health problems to bring the animals in at a different time, and we have a veterinary clinic that deals with that. So we don't encourage people to add things on like my dog's limping, please check his ear, all of those things. We say, unless it's related to the safety of the surgery, we're going to recommend that you bring that problem to our veterinary clinic and have that dealt with. Dropping it off for surgery is a really poor substitute for that. We don't get good histories. We don't know how long it's been going on, so forth. So we very much limit the services that we offer. They're here for a spay-neuter, and you can add vaccines, we can add deworming, flea treatments, those kinds of things, but we're not going to get into all medical services. Simplify the pricing. I know this is something that we don't bring up a lot, but we don't want to penalize people for having big dogs, for example, if big dogs in your community are the ones that are dying in the shelter. So we really try hard to structure your prices so that they don't discourage your target population from coming in. We keep feral cats, we try to offer major discounts, if not free, whenever we have funding for them. So we're really losing money on the ferals when we're gaining a little money for the dogs, which most people are more motivated to bring in. So that's pricing, simple pricing. Streamline the records. Records are really important. Some veterinarians get really anal about it and want to write everything down, especially when they first start this. You develop forms that are check boxes, and you develop forms that you don't have to write things twice, so you have duplicate copies. It gets a little problematic when we transferred all of our records to all computer, and it added a lot of extra work, but in the long run, it's helped us develop our veterinary clinic and have centralized medical records. But when you're running a spay-neuter clinic, the first thing you want to do is to make sure your paperwork is very, very simple. I've already talked about maximizing the facility, keeping it open. You spent a lot of money on all of those expensive medical equipment. Don't be embarrassed about assembly line techniques. They actually benefit the animal. They're not cutting corners. They're not making anybody not pay attention to the animals that are there. The staff members become much more adept at the one task that they're given. And they're supposed to focus on that task and not try to do everything, the whole assembly line down. So we have stations. We teach people their specific duties and try to get them to not try to learn other duties initially. They have to keep a good tempo. You have to hire people who are energetic, enthusiastic, and that stay focused. Addressing bottlenecks. You have got all of these people. The number of staff is really important. I think I throw that in there a little bit later. But the The bottlenecks come up a lot. Somebody's got a problem with this cat, special request, somebody put the wrong cat in the wrong trap. All of these things happen. You can't stop your assembly line. It's really important. The flow has to keep going. And so you need to plan ahead and have somebody who's the problem solver and make sure that the whole group doesn't get involved in the problem solving, just that person. We have protocols for emergencies. We have protocols for all those things. It just snaps in, and people are ready. Keeping the clinic flow, this was just a note to myself. I was very efficient with a small space. When I started getting bigger space, it made things a little bit slower just because we had so much more number of steps to go through. But you know, that when we get to the mega clinics, it loses its importance. Preparing stations. We spend a lot of time, if you see these right here, these are basically pre-drawn up vaccine doses, or actually not vaccines, but anesthetic drugs. We have, you know, set numbers that this is going to be for this level cat. I didn't put a picture here, but actually it's right there. I made a chart for the technicians. They just have to look on one column, the weight of the cat, and then they know what drug to draw. But a lot of these drugs are already drawn up, so it makes it a lot quicker. We're preparing the stations ahead of time. Makes the assembly line work smoothly. We do things like we pull up the rabies vaccines into syringes, so just that couple seconds it saves. Every station is stocked. There's a surgeon station. We have one next to every surgery table so that the surgeons don't have to walk around the room and get their stuff. They shouldn't have to. We put all the surgical packs, have everything in there so that you don't have to call an assistant to help you at any point. We keep the surgery instruments down to the bare minimum because the more instruments you throw in there, the more scrubbing has to be done and repacking, and so it becomes less and less efficient if you add extra things. We do use suture on a reel, and when you start getting into numbers like we have, which are 600, 700 surgeries a week, add that up. If you know what suture cost, it's very expensive. So that would be somewhere between $3 and $4 a pack times 700 surgeries a week. That's how much you would pay for suture in a pack. So the reels really start making a difference. I resisted these for years because as a surgeon, they're just rougher. They're not as smooth and beautiful and all of that. But I finally made the transition when we started getting our numbers up. And all you had to do is do a little bit of math and figure out how many, thousands of dollars you would save just in 1 week. We have the surgeon's gloves right here. So everybody, we don't re-scrub between each surgery. We keep our gloves on until we're ready to start the next one. We peel those off, put a fresh, sterile pair on. These are all pretty basic for spay neuter clinics. So, I'm just mentioning them just as an example of efficiency. Staffing is one thing that people get stuck up on. They don't think they can afford staff. And that really slows them down. You need to maximize your veterinarians. You need to have technicians that are fully confident and can take their station and be responsible for it without calling the veterinarian over to do things that veterinarian doesn't have to do. So the veterinarians should be focused on, first of all, doing all the exams. Second of all, being in surgery and doing surgery. Our ratio, our sweet spot right now is somewhere between 3 and 4 technicians per surgeon. And that includes the kennel people who clean and who do some of the discharges, people scrubbing instruments. Those are all considered technicians. The only thing that doesn't include are the customer service people at the front desk. So right now, it really is 1 to 3. And 1 to 4 really makes us efficient, especially now that we have veterinarians who are really fast with surgery. So our limiting factor is a lot of times is the technicians. The veterinarians are waiting for them, and that's not ideal. This was a colleague of mine who did a survey, Sarah White, and just asking veterinarians who do spay neuter full-time how many assistants they have and how many surgeries they get done per hour. So she was trying to put some numbers on it just to show that you're much more productive in getting your surgeries done the more technicians you have. And the biggest jump is between 1 and 2 or 2 and 3. Those are 1 and 3. I see some vet clinics that try to do it with so few numbers, there's just not a benefit to it. There's a quick slide here. I'm going to rush right past this. It just tells you like how it's cost effective. You get more surgeries done, you can earn more money, and you absolutely can pay for the cost of those extra staff members. Economy of scale. We're ordering lots of drugs. We're like very, very popular with the veterinary suppliers. We're one of their biggest clients, and so we get good pricing. We make choices that are good. We don't have to use brand name if we don't need to. Obviously, these are things that make a big difference when you're in the high numbers. Economy of scale. This means, again, you have to keep your numbers high. If you're starting to fall, if you're going in there and you thought you were going to have 75 surgeries scheduled that day and only 60 show up, we need to make an adjustment. We need to book more. We need to overbook to compensate for all those no-shows. That's really important. It goes back to flexibility. Don't worry so much if a lot of those surgeons or those surgeries show up and you can't get to them that day. Well, there's some options. Farrells, we'll just keep them another day. We feed them. We give them fresh traps if they get dirty. But that's flexible. If you run into time issues, you don't stress. Don't think you're going to be there until midnight. We'll call the clients and say, look, we're really running behind. Can we keep Fluffy overnight and we'll do her tomorrow, pick her up at the end of the day? 9 times out of 10, they're fine with that. You just, you apologize for the inconvenience and go on. But don't stress. You want to keep your numbers high. You want to overbook. Here's some scenarios of how we solved problems. And this goes on and on and on and on and on. So these are just some examples if you're into the mechanics of spay neuter clinics. And I don't know how many people here are actually into the mechanics. Okay, 5 more minutes. This would be something. We never know how many Farrells can show up. We can't do walk-ins. It's crazy. We do Farrell Freedom and walk-ins. And so, again, we put the average number of appointments in, and we adjust. How many more surgeries to go? It's like the kids in the car, and, are we there yet? And I would get that a lot. I eventually banned the question. I said, you're not allowed to ask how many more surgeries. For one thing, we stopped making a difference. It didn't matter, because we were going to do surgery up to 6 o'clock. So it didn't matter how many more were left. We really were going to let you go at 6. So they stopped stressing about that. It made a big difference. They really, everybody has a life, and so they want to get out of there. And when they see these endless, feral traps coming in, we get deliveries all day long. The 2 transports that come in from animal control, the walk-ins, it could really stress you out if you think about it. So you keep a schedule so everyone knows what their consistency is going to be. Their stress levels are going to go down. Again, we hold Farrells over. We try to. We have times when we get backed up, and we try to make adjustments. If we get more than 2 days backed up, the animals should be coming in one day, and if they don't get surgery the next day, they should get it day 3. Day 1, they're delivered. Day 2, they usually get surgery. Day 3, if we're backed up, they might have to wait till day 3. But that's our goal. If it goes beyond that, then we start looking at our appointment schedule and making adjustments, saying, okay, wait, we're going to have to cut back on appointments so that we can get this backlog going. But, again, there's options. Nobody has to have a meltdown. Feral cats are not picked up within 2 days. I didn't get a picture in here of our shelves and the numbers that we have, but many, 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 many traps. And they're being brought in by all kinds of different people. Sometimes they don't come and pick them up. We make the phone call, they don't come. So we started using these little laminated tags that are hung on each trap in the front. Says the day that they arrived, and it's just a, you can erase, wipe them off at the end, but you put the day that they arrived and the day that they had surgery, so that the person responsible for that room goes around and looks at all those traps and says, this one has been here 2 days. Let's get on the phone again. So that became a problem at one point. We had some animals that were staying too long, and we didn't pick it up because we had so many traps. Or the traps were being done out of order. Like the day, Monday's arrivals would be skipped over for some reason, and all of Tuesdays would get done, and these poor cats that came in on Monday didn't get done. So we learned to write these dates in a really visible location so that our staff can keep track. And also, just as an aside, because we do transport, and we do all of the trap neuter return for the Feral Freedom Program. If we get a feral cat that brought in by a private person that never comes and picks it up, which is really rare, almost never, we actually have a transport driver that can drive it back to their house. So we're not stuck with the cat. These are just things. When there's complications, this is what you do. You call the other people. You delay surgeries. This comes up a lot. We were just talking about this right before this session started. We get kittens that are brought in that are too small or too sick. Again, we have options. And not a lot of them, but we do ask caretakers to take them back. Say, please, if you're able to, can you take them back until they're a little bit bigger or until they're healthy? In some cases, we get them from animal control because they're full out. They can't take any more adoptions. These kittens are either going to be euthanized or they're going to go through TNR. And if, in my opinion, and the way we've developed this is crept up, but the way that I feel is that these kittens have a chance. They're healthy. They were in a situation that they were previously getting food. They're not starved. They're not sickly. I'm going to go ahead and let the TNR go on and have them released. In most cases, I used to do this, and I'm doing it less and less now, I used to always check, is there a caretaker? Somebody taking care of these kittens? Is there somebody who's got their regular feeding schedule going? Or is the mama? Where's the mama cat? Okay, sorry. And so anyway, too small for vaccines. We just go ahead and vaccinate them all now. So these are problems that just keep getting solved. It's not the end. Some pictures, and this is the end. This is actually the end. We will put a tag on a trap that says infectious. If we're worried about it, keep it separate. We started putting cats, the pet cats, on bigger blankets because too many people were just putting them onto the beach, and half the cat was hanging off the blanket. Well, infectious disease is a really big problem around here. So we adjusted, and you could see they're now on these bigger mats. We get them donated, and I try to really enforce that. Cage labels. This is a trap that's all ready for surgery. The technician has put the medical record, all the vaccines, the anesthetic doses, everything's up there ready. This is their cage card. If there was anything specific for that feral cat that they wanted us to look at, this would be here. This is one of those tags that I was telling you about. If you can't read it, it says Brave Heart. I love that name. Brave Heart Elton. And on the flip side, it says he arrived 10/7, and he was done 10/7. So that's how that system works. This is our prepping for surgery. They don't have their covers on because they're just right now about ready to be induced. We will roll up that sheet right there and roll it up as we go and put a fresh one down. We actually have cardboard underneath that. We have a rule. Feral traps are not allowed to be put directly on the floor. Really important. And people will walk around the clinic and the poop will fall through the bottom. Really important to pick that up right away. And that's the station, and that's it. And if we're taking questions at the end.